Patricia grabbed her Gucci purse and slammed it on the mahogany table so hard the silverware rattled. She looked her brother dead in the eyes, her face twisted with disgust. "Bankrupt, you're standing here in my mother's dining room, telling me you lost everything, and now you expect to sleep in my house." She laughed. Not a warm laugh, a cold, cruel laugh that made everyone at the table shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Marcus, I have clients coming next month. Important people, people who matter. Having you walking around my house looking like—" She gestured at his stained shirt, his torn jeans, his boots held together with tape. "Looking like that would destroy everything I've built. So no. The answer is no. Find somewhere else." "Where?" And just like that, the sister who had called him sobbing for $200,000 just 18 months ago, the sister whose daughter's wedding he had paid for in full, the sister who had hugged him at that wedding and whispered that he was the best brother in the world, turned her back on him like he was a stranger, begging for change on the street. But here's what Patricia didn't know. Here's what nobody at that table knew as they sat there making excuses, avoiding eye contact, suddenly remembering how small their houses were and how complicated their lives had become. Marcus Whitfield was still worth $4.7 billion. Every single word out of his mouth had been a lie, and he was watching, testing, taking mental notes on exactly who his family really was when they thought he had nothing left to give them. My precious family, before we dive deeper into this incredible story, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now. Give this video a like. And please stay with me until the very end, because what happens next will shake you to your core. Drop a comment below telling me what city you're watching from so I can see just how far around the world this story travels. Now let me take you back to where it all began. Marcus Whitfield pulled the rusted pickup truck to the side of the road 3 blocks from his mother's house. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. He had faced down corporate raiders who wanted to destroy his company. He had survived hostile takeovers that would have broken lesser men. He had stared across negotiating tables at billionaires and politicians and walked away with everything he wanted. But this was different. This was family. He pulled down the sun visor and looked at himself in the cracked mirror. The face staring back at him was almost unrecognizable. 3 days of stubble. Dark circles under his eyes from deliberately not sleeping. A stained work shirt he had bought at a Goodwill in Atlanta for $4. Marcus Whitfield, founder and CEO of Whitfield Biotech, worth $4.7 billion, looked like a man who had lost everything. That was exactly the point. He thought about Sarah, his first ex-wife. She had filed for divorce 6 months after his company went public. Her lawyers had been ruthless. She walked away with $40 million and never looked back. He thought about Michelle, his second ex-wife. She had lasted 3 years. 3 years of pretending to love him while secretly meeting with divorce attorneys. She took $60 million and the house in Aspen. He thought about his children from his first marriage, David and Jennifer. They were adults now with lives of their own. They called on his birthday. They called on Christmas. And they called whenever they needed money, which was often. Was that love, or was that obligation mixed with self-interest? Marcus didn't know anymore. That was the problem. After 18 years of building his empire, after 18 years of watching people smile to his face while calculating his net worth in their heads, he had lost the ability to tell the difference between genuine affection and elaborate performance. So, he had devised a test. He would go home to Savannah to the family he had left behind when he chased his dreams to Boston. He would tell them he had lost everything. Bankruptcy, SEC investigation, complete financial ruin. And then he would watch. He would finally know the truth. Marcus took a deep breath, started the truck, and drove the final 3 blocks to his mother's house. The white colonial with its tall pillars looked exactly the same as it had when he left 18 years ago. The oak tree in the front yard. The azalea bushes his mother had planted when Marcus was a boy. The wraparound porch where he had sat with his father on summer evenings, listening to stories about the old days. His father had been dead for 23 years now. Heart attack at 54. Gone in an instant, leaving behind a wife and 3 children and a life insurance policy that barely covered the funeral. Marcus had been 15 years old. He remembered standing at the graveside, his mother's hand gripping his so tight it hurt and making a silent promise. He would get out of Savannah. He would make something of himself. He would become so successful that his family would never have to worry about money again. He had kept that promise, but somewhere along the way, he had started to wonder if the money was the only reason they kept him around. Marcus parked the truck at the curb and sat there for a moment, gathering his courage. Through the windows of the house, he could see shadows moving. His family was inside. His mother, his brother Daniel, his sister Patricia, aunts and uncles and cousins, all gathered for Sunday dinner just like they had been doing for 40 years. They didn't know he was coming. He climbed out of the truck and walked toward the house. Each step felt heavier than the last. The Georgia heat wrapped around him like a wet blanket, thick and suffocating. He reached the porch steps. His hand was reaching for the door when it swung open. His mother stood in the doorway. Eleanor Whitfield was 78 years old, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. Dark brown, almost black, with a penetrating quality that had always made Marcus feel like she could see straight through any lie he tried to tell. She looked at him, at his stained shirt, his torn jeans, his worn-out boots. Something flickered across her face. Recognition, understanding, something else that Marcus couldn't identify. Then it was gone. "Marcus," she said calmly. "Come inside. Everyone's waiting for Sunday dinner." No surprise, no shock, no questions about why he looked like he had been sleeping in his car for a week. Just that calm, measured voice that revealed nothing. Marcus followed his mother into the house. The smell hit him immediately. Fried chicken, collard greens, cornbread, sweet potato pie. The smells of his childhood, the smells of every Sunday dinner he had ever attended in this house. But today those smells made his stomach turn. The dining room was full. Patricia sat at the table in a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her husband Richard was beside her, already looking bored, already checking his phone. Daniel sat across from them, still in his work clothes, dirt under his fingernails, sweat stains on his collar. He had come straight from a job site just like he always did. Aunts and uncles filled the remaining seats. Cousin after cousin, some of whom Marcus barely recognized, stared at him with expressions ranging from confusion to poorly concealed disgust. The conversation died the moment he walked in. Patricia's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Her eyes traveled from his face to his stained shirt to his torn jeans, and her lip curled in distaste. "Marcus, what are you doing here?" "I didn't know I needed an invitation to Sunday dinner." "You don't. But you also don't usually show up looking like—" She waved her hand vaguely. "Like that." "Patricia." Richard put a warning hand on his wife's arm. "Let him speak." Marcus moved further into the room. Every eye was on him. He could feel the weight of their judgment, their curiosity, their calculations. "I need to tell you all something," he said. Eleanor sat down at the head of the table. She folded her hands in front of her and weighted her face, revealing nothing. "There was a lawsuit," Marcus began. "A big one. The kind that doesn't just cost you money. The kind that takes everything." Patricia set her fork down. "The SEC got involved. Frozen accounts, seized assets. By the time my lawyers finished fighting it, there was nothing left. The company is gone. The properties are gone. Everything I built for 18 years is gone." He paused. "I'm bankrupt. I need somewhere to stay while I figure out how to rebuild." Silence. Not sympathetic silence. Not the silence of family rallying around someone in crisis. Cold silence. Calculating silence. Patricia exchanged a look with Richard. Something passed between them, a wordless conversation that excluded everyone else at the table. Then Patricia laughed. "I'm sorry," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "I'm just trying to process this. The great Marcus Whitfield, the genius who was too good for Savannah, the big shot who only came home for funerals and holidays, is standing in Mama's dining room asking for a handout." "Patricia," Daniel's voice was low warning. "What I'm just saying, what everyone else is thinking." She turned back to Marcus. "You haven't called me in 3 months. 3 months. The last time I heard from you was when you sent that check for Madison's graduation, and you couldn't even be bothered to come to the ceremony." "I was in Tokyo. I had meetings that I couldn't." "You always have meetings, Marcus. You always have something more important than your family." Patricia picked up her wine glass and took a long sip. "And now when you need something from us suddenly, you remember you have a sister." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "I paid for Madison's entire wedding. I paid off your mortgage when Richard's business failed. Oh, here we go." Patricia rolled her eyes. "The list. I was wondering when you'd pull out the list. Tell me, Marcus, do you keep a spreadsheet? Do you track every dollar you've ever given us so you can throw it back in our faces when it's convenient?" "That's not what I'm doing." "No. Then what are you doing? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you came here expecting us to drop everything and rescue you because you've been writing checks for years and now you want to collect." Richard cleared his throat. "Look, Marcus, we're sorry about your situation. We really are. But Patricia has clients coming next month, important people. Having you staying with us during that time would be complicated." "Complicated," Marcus repeated. "Yes, complicated. Surely you understand. You're a businessman. You know how appearances matter." Marcus turned to look at the aunts and uncles. They were all suddenly very interested in their plates, pushing food around, avoiding his eyes. "Uncle Walter." Walter looked up reluctantly. "Marcus, you know I'd help if I could, but my apartment is tiny. There's barely room for me." "Aunt Beatrice?" "My health hasn't been good, Marcus. The doctor says I need to avoid stress." "Cousin James?" "We just took in my mother-in-law. The house is already overflowing." One by one, excuse after excuse. Every face he turned to had another reason why they couldn't help. Every voice had another explanation for why this wasn't a good time. Marcus listened to all of it. He cataloged every excuse, every averted gaze, every shift in body language. He filed it all away in his mind, adding it to the evidence he was collecting. Then he turned to his mother. "Mama." Eleanor Whitfield looked at her youngest son. Her face was calm, unreadable. The same face she had worn when she told him his father was dead. The same face she had worn when she watched him leave for Boston 18 years ago. "The house is full," she said simply. "Your old room is storage now. There's nowhere for you to sleep." Marcus stared at her. This was the woman who had raised him. The woman who had worked 3 jobs after his father died to keep food on the table. The woman who had told him over and over that family was everything, that blood was thicker than water, that no matter what happened in life, she would always be there for him. That woman had just told him there was no room for him in his childhood home. "I see," Marcus said quietly. The dining room felt smaller. The walls pressed in. The smell of food that had seemed so welcoming just minutes ago now made him want to vomit. He had expected rejection from Patricia. She had always been selfish, always been obsessed with status and appearances. He had prepared for excuses from the aunts and uncles. They had always been distant, always keeping him at arm's length, even when he was writing checks to bail them out of trouble. But his mother... He hadn't prepared for that. "Well," Patricia said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "I'm sure you'll figure something out. You always do. You're Marcus Whitfield, after all, the smartest man in any room. Isn't that what you always told us?" Marcus didn't respond. He was about to turn and walk out when Daniel pushed back his chair. "No," Daniel said. Everyone looked at him. Daniel stood up slowly, deliberately. He was a big man, broad-shouldered with hands calloused from years of construction work. He looked around the table at his family, and his face was hard. "No," he said again. "I'm not going to sit here and watch this." "Danny, stay out of it," Patricia warned. "Stay out of it. He's my brother, Patricia. He's our brother. And you're sitting there treating him like he's some stranger who wandered in off the street." "He practically is a stranger. When's the last time he came home for more than 2 days? When's the last time he called just to talk, not to tell us about some award he won or some deal he closed? That doesn't matter." "Of course it matters. Family is supposed to be there for each other. It's supposed to go both ways. You can't just show up after years of being absent and expect everyone to drop everything for you." Daniel walked around the table until he was standing next to Marcus. "I don't care about any of that," Daniel said. "I don't care if he's been gone for 18 years or 18 days. I don't care if he's broke or if he's got $1 billion in the bank. He's my brother. That means something to me, even if it doesn't mean anything to the rest of you." He put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. "You're coming home with me. I've got a spare room. It's not fancy, but it's clean and the bed's comfortable. Stay as long as you need." Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a loosening, a release of tension he hadn't even realized he was holding. "Danny, you don't have to." "Yeah, I do. That's what family is supposed to be about." Daniel turned to face Patricia. "You should try it sometime." Patricia's face flushed red. "How dare you? How dare I? How dare you, Patricia? How dare all of you?" Daniel looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes in turn. "This man has given this family more than any of us could ever repay. He paid for weddings and funerals and mortgages. He sent money for college tuition and medical bills and business loans. And the one time he needs something from us, the one time he comes asking for help, you all can't wait to make excuses." "That's not fair," Aunt Beatrice protested. "I really do have health problems." "We all have problems, Aunt B. That's life. But when family needs you, you find a way. You don't sit there listing reasons why you can't help. You figure it out." The table erupted. Everyone started talking at once, aunts defending themselves, uncles explaining their situations, Patricia shouting at Daniel, Richard trying to calm his wife down. Through it all, Marcus watched. He watched Patricia's face cycle through embarrassment and anger and something that looked almost like guilt before settling back into defensive hostility. He watched Richard pull out his phone and start typing, probably already texting someone about the drama unfolding in front of him. He watched his aunts and uncles argue amongst themselves about who had the right to judge whom, and he watched his mother. Eleanor sat at the head of the table, silent and still, her eyes moving from face to face. Watching, measuring, cataloging everything she saw. Her gaze met Marcus's, and for just a moment Marcus could have sworn he saw her smile. Not a warm smile, not a happy smile. Something else. Something that looked almost like satisfaction. Like a scientist watching an experiment unfold exactly as predicted. Then it was gone, and Eleanor was standing raising her hands for silence. "Enough," she said. The room went quiet immediately. Even after all these years, Eleanor Whitfield commanded respect. "This is Sunday dinner," she continued. "Not a courtroom. Everyone sit down and finish your meal." Patricia opened her mouth to protest, but one look from her mother silenced her. Daniel squeezed Marcus's shoulder. "Come on, let's get out of here." Marcus nodded. He didn't say goodbye to Patricia. He didn't acknowledge his aunts and uncles. He didn't even look at his mother as he turned toward the door. But just before he stepped outside, Eleanor's voice stopped him. "Marcus!" He turned. His mother stood in the doorway to the dining room, her face still unreadable, her eyes fixed on his. "Be careful," she said. "Sometimes the people who offer help aren't offering what you think they're offering." Marcus frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means exactly what I said." Eleanor turned and walked back to her seat. Now go. Your brother is waiting." Marcus stood there for a long moment trying to decipher his mother's words. Was it a warning? A riddle? Some kind of test within his test? He didn't know. But as he walked out the front door and down the porch steps, he couldn't shake the feeling that his mother knew something she wasn't telling him. Daniel was already waiting by his truck, a Ford F-150 that had seen better days, but was in far better shape than Marcus's borrowed vehicle. "You okay?" Daniel asked. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "I really don't know." "Don't let them get to you. Patricia's always been about appearances, and the aunts and uncles, they're just scared. They see someone fall and they're afraid it might be contagious." "And Mama?" Daniel's expression shifted. Something flickered across his face, something Marcus couldn't quite identify. "Mama's complicated," he said, after a moment. "She's always been complicated. You know that." Marcus did know. His mother had always been the smartest person in any room, the most strategic. Growing up, Marcus had watched her manage the family like a chess master, moving pieces into position, always thinking 3 moves ahead. He had inherited that ability from her. He had used it to build an empire. But standing here in the Georgia heat, wearing clothes that weren't his own, playing a role in a drama of his own creation, Marcus wondered if his mother was playing a game of her own. And if she was, what did that make him? "Let's go," Daniel said. "We can talk more at my place. I'll put on some coffee, and you can tell me the whole story." Marcus followed his brother's truck through the streets of Savannah past neighborhoods he remembered, and neighborhoods he didn't, until they pulled into the driveway of a small ranch house on a quiet street. The house was modest. A single story. Faded paint. A yard that needed mowing. The kind of house that said honest work without saying much else. Marcus thought about his penthouse in Manhattan. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. The imported Italian marble. The closet full of custom suits. None of that had made him happy. Maybe there was something to be said for simple. Daniel unlocked the front door and led Marcus inside. The house smelled like pine sol and old coffee. The furniture was worn but clean. Family photographs lined the walls, mostly of Daniel, with his construction crew standing in front of completed projects. "Spare rooms down the hall," Daniel said. "Bathrooms on the right. Help yourself to anything in the kitchen." Marcus walked down the narrow hallway and pushed open the door to the spare room. It was small. A twin bed with a faded quilt. A dresser that had seen better days. A window looking out onto the backyard. "It's not much," Daniel said from the doorway, "but it's yours for as long as you need it." "It's perfect," Marcus said, and he meant it. Daniel nodded, satisfied. "Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow I'll take you to meet my crew. If you're serious about getting back on your feet, I can put you to work. The pay's not great, but it's honest money." "Honest money sounds good right now." Daniel studied his brother's face for a long moment. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "What really happened, Marcus? I mean, I heard what you said back at Mama's house, but lawsuits don't just take everything. Billionaires don't go bankrupt overnight. There's got to be more to the story." Marcus had prepared for this question. He had spent hours crafting the details of his fictional downfall, making sure every element was believable. But standing here looking at his brother's genuine concern, Marcus felt something he hadn't expected. Guilt. "I trusted the wrong people," Marcus said slowly. "I made investments I shouldn't have made, cut corners I shouldn't have cut, and when it all came crashing down, there was no one to blame but myself." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "That doesn't sound like you. The Marcus I remember was always the smartest person in the room, always 3 steps ahead." "Maybe being smart isn't enough. Maybe I was so focused on the money that I forgot to pay attention to what really matters." Daniel smiled, but there was something sad in it. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I know what you mean." He clapped Marcus on the shoulder. "Get some sleep, brother. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Daniel left, pulling the door closed behind him. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed alone for the first time since he had arrived in Savannah. He listened to his brother's footsteps retreating down the hallway, the creak of springs as Daniel settled onto his own bed. Then silence. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. His real phone. The encrypted device that connected him to his empire. He powered it on. Messages flooded the screen. His assistant asking for decisions on 3 pending acquisitions. His CFO with questions about the quarterly projections. Board members and investors and lawyers all demanding his attention. Marcus scrolled through the messages without reading any of them. Then he opened his banking app. The number that appeared on the screen was almost incomprehensible. $4,700,000,000. More money than he could spend in 100 lifetimes. He stared at that number for a long time. His sister thought he was broke. His aunts and uncles thought he had lost everything. His mother had turned him away from his childhood home. Only Daniel had offered help. Only Daniel had passed the test. Or had he, Marcus, thought about his mother's warning? Sometimes the people who offer help aren't offering what you think they're offering. What did that mean? Was Eleanor trying to tell him something about Daniel? Marcus powered off his phone and slipped it back into his pocket. Tomorrow, he would start working for his brother's construction company. He would haul materials and clean job sites and do whatever Daniel asked him to do. He would be Marcus Whitfield, the failure, the bankrupt, the brother who needed help. And he would watch. He would pay attention to every word Daniel said, every decision he made, every person he talked to. Because Marcus hadn't built a $4.7 billion empire by trusting people at face value. He had built it by watching, by waiting, by gathering information until he knew exactly who he was dealing with. And then, only then, deciding who deserved his trust. Marcus lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling. The mattress was lumpy. The pillow was flat. The quilt smelled faintly of mothballs. It was the most comfortable he had felt in years. He closed his eyes and let sleep take him, wondering what tomorrow would bring. Wondering if Daniel was really the one good person in his family. Wondering what secrets his mother was keeping. Wondering if he would find the truth he was looking for. Or if the truth would find him first. The next morning, Marcus woke to the sound of his brother banging around in the kitchen. For a moment, he didn't know where he was. The ceiling was wrong. The bed was wrong. Everything was wrong. Then it came back to him. Savannah. His mother's house. The rejection. Daniel's offer. Marcus sat up slowly, his body aching in places he had forgotten could ache. He hadn't done physical labor in years. His muscles were already protesting, and he hadn't even started working yet. He walked down the hallway and found Daniel in the kitchen pouring coffee into 2 chipped mugs. "Morning," Daniel said. "You look like hell." "I feel like hell." "Good. That means you're alive." Daniel handed him a mug. "Drink up. We've got a long day ahead." Marcus took the coffee and sat down at the small kitchen table. "What's the job today?" "Demolition. We're tearing out the interior of an old house over on Crawford Street. New owner wants to gut it and start fresh." "Sounds straightforward." "It's hot, dirty work. You sure you're up for it?" Marcus looked at his brother. "I'm up for whatever you need me to do." Daniel studied him for a moment, then nodded. "All right. Let me grab my gear and we'll head out." 20 minutes later, Marcus was sitting in the passenger seat of Daniel's truck, watching the streets of Savannah slide past the window. The city had changed since he left. New buildings, new businesses. But underneath the changes, it was still the same place he remembered. The same oak trees dripping with Spanish moss. The same historic squares with their monuments and benches. The same mix of old money and new development, tradition and progress. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said. "Sure." "Why did you stay?" "After Daddy died after I left for Boston, you could have gone anywhere. Done anything. Why did you stay in Savannah?" Daniel was quiet for a moment, his eyes on the road. "Someone had to," he said finally. "Mama wasn't getting any younger. Patricia was already married to Richard and climbing the social ladder as fast as she could. Someone had to stay and make sure things didn't fall apart. That shouldn't have been your responsibility. Maybe not, but it was the right thing to do. Daniel glanced at his brother. Not everything in life is about what's fair, Marcus. Sometimes it's about what needs to be done. Marcus thought about that as they drove. He had spent 18 years chasing success, building his company, accumulating wealth. He had told himself that the money was for his family, that he was working so hard so they would never have to worry. But the truth was, he had been running from Savannah, running from the memory of his father's funeral, running from the weight of expectations and the suffocation of small-town life. Daniel had stayed. Daniel had done the hard work of being present, of showing up, of taking care of their mother day after day, year after year. And what had Marcus done? He had sent checks. Checks were easy. Checks didn't require sacrifice or presence or vulnerability. You wrote a number on a piece of paper and your obligation was fulfilled. But maybe obligation and love weren't the same thing. Maybe that's what his mother had been trying to show him. "We're here," Daniel said, pulling the truck to a stop in front of a two-story house that had clearly seen better days. The paint was peeling. The porch was sagging. Several windows were boarded up. "Doesn't look like much," Marcus said. "It will when we're done with it. New owner's got big plans. Wants to turn it into a bed and breakfast." They climbed out of the truck and walked toward the house. Two other men were already there, unloading equipment from a trailer. "Marcus, this is Terrell and James. They've been with me for about 3 years now. Guys, this is my brother Marcus. He's going to be helping us out for a while." Terrell, a heavy-set man in his 40s, looked Marcus up and down. "This the one from Boston, the rich one?" "Not so rich anymore," Daniel said quickly. "He's fallen on hard times. I'm helping him get back on his feet." James, younger and leaner, shrugged. "Long as he can swing a sledgehammer, I don't care where he's from." "I can swing a sledgehammer," Marcus said. "We'll see about that." Terrell handed him a hard hat and a pair of work gloves. "Let's get to it." The next 8 hours were the most physically demanding of Marcus's life. He swung sledgehammers until his arms burned. He carried debris until his back screamed. He breathed in dust and plaster and years of accumulated grime until his lungs felt like they were on fire. But he didn't complain. He didn't ask for breaks. He didn't slow down even when every muscle in his body begged him to stop. Because this was part of the test too. Not just testing his family, testing himself. Could he do this? Could he survive without the money, the power, the privilege? Could he be a regular person, working a regular job, living a regular life? By the end of the day, Marcus had his answer. Yes, he could do this. And something about that knowledge felt like freedom. Daniel drove him back to the house as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "You did good today," Daniel said. "Better than I expected. You expected me to fail. I expected you to quit after the first hour. That's what most people do when they find out what real work feels like." Marcus laughed. It was the first genuine laugh he had experienced in months. "I'm tougher than I look." "Yeah," Daniel said. "I'm starting to see that." They pulled into the driveway and sat there for a moment, neither of them moving. "Can I ask you something?" Daniel said. "You can ask me anything. Back at Mama's house when everyone was making excuses, when even Mama turned you away, I saw your face. You weren't surprised. You were almost relieved, like you expected it to happen." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that something doesn't add up. You're one of the smartest people I've ever known. You built a company worth billions of dollars, and you're telling me you just let everything slip away, that you didn't see the lawsuit coming, that you couldn't do anything to protect yourself." Marcus didn't answer. "I'm not trying to accuse you of anything," Daniel continued. "I just want to understand. What's really going on, Marcus? Why are you really here?" The question hung in the air between them. Marcus thought about telling the truth. For just a moment, he considered confessing everything. The test, the billions still sitting in his accounts, the elaborate deception he had constructed to discover who in his family actually loved him. But something stopped him. His mother's words echoed in his mind. Sometimes the people who offer help aren't offering what you think they're offering. What if Daniel wasn't as innocent as he seemed? What if this whole thing, the kindness, the generosity, the offer of help, was just another manipulation? Marcus couldn't take that risk, not yet. Not until he knew for sure. "I told you the truth," Marcus said carefully. "I trusted the wrong people. I made mistakes. And now I'm paying for them." Daniel looked at him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay," he said. "If that's your story, I'll accept it. But Marcus, if there's something else going on, if there's something you're not telling me, I hope you know you can trust me." "I know," Marcus said. But even as he said the words, he wasn't sure if they were true. That night after Daniel had gone to bed, Marcus lay awake in the spare room staring at the ceiling. His body was exhausted, but his mind wouldn't stop racing. He thought about Patricia's cruelty, his mother's cryptic warning, Daniel's probing questions. He thought about the test he had designed and wondered if he was the one being tested. And he thought about what he would find if he started digging into his brother's life. Because that's what he was going to do. Tomorrow, while Daniel was working, Marcus would search this house. He would look for anything that didn't add up, any sign that Daniel wasn't who he claimed to be. He would find the truth, whatever it took, whatever it cost. Because Marcus Whitfield hadn't built an empire by trusting people blindly. He had built it by knowing exactly who he was dealing with. And he was about to find out exactly who his brother really was. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus moved into Daniel's house, and something was wrong. He couldn't explain it at first, just a feeling. A prickling at the back of his neck whenever Daniel answered his phone and walked into another room. The way his brother's smile sometimes flickered like a light with a loose connection. The late-night phone calls that Daniel always took outside pacing the backyard in the dark. Marcus told himself he was being paranoid. He told himself that 18 years of dealing with backstabbers and corporate sharks had made him suspicious of everyone, even the one person who had shown him genuine kindness. But his mother's words kept echoing in his mind. Sometimes the people who offer help aren't offering what you think they're offering. What did she know? What had she seen that Marcus hadn't? It was a Thursday morning, 3 weeks and 2 days after Marcus had arrived in Savannah, when he finally decided to find out. Daniel had left early for a job across town. He wouldn't be back until evening. That gave Marcus at least 8 hours to search the house. He started in the obvious places: the desk in Daniel's bedroom, the filing cabinet in the corner of the living room, the stack of papers on the kitchen counter. Nothing. Bills, bank statements showing a modest balance, invoices from suppliers, the normal paperwork of a small business owner struggling to stay afloat. Marcus was about to give up when he noticed something. The filing cabinet had a bottom drawer that wouldn't open. He pulled harder. It was locked. Marcus looked around the room, his heart beginning to beat faster. Daniel had never mentioned anything being locked. He had told Marcus to make himself at home, to treat the house like his own. So why was this drawer locked? Marcus went to the kitchen and found a butter knife. He came back to the filing cabinet and worked the knife into the gap between the drawer and the frame. It took him several minutes of careful manipulation, but finally he heard a click. The drawer slid open. Inside was a leather-bound ledger. Marcus pulled it out and opened it to the first page. What he saw made his blood run cold. Names, addresses, dollar amounts. Page after page of them, all written in Daniel's handwriting. But these weren't the records of a construction business. Marcus recognized the pattern immediately. He had seen it before in business school case studies about predatory lending and real estate scams. The addresses were all in his mother's neighborhood. The names were elderly homeowners, people who had lived in those houses for decades. And the dollar amounts next to their names were offers that were 40 to 60% below market value. Marcus turned the pages faster, his hands trembling. There were notes in the margins, detailed notes about each homeowner's financial situation, who was behind on their property taxes, who had medical bills they couldn't pay, who had recently lost a spouse and might be vulnerable to pressure. There were references to something called Magnolia Development Group, a silent partnership, plans for what would happen to the properties once they were acquired. And then Marcus saw it. His mother's name, Eleanor Whitfield, her address, and next to it, an offer of $180,000. Her house was worth at least $450,000. Marcus stared at the page, unable to breathe. His brother, the one person in his family who had seemed genuine, the one person who had offered help without asking for anything in return. That brother was running a scheme to steal their own mother's home. Marcus heard a sound behind him and spun around. Daniel was standing in the doorway. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Daniel's eyes moved from Marcus's face to the open drawer to the ledger in Marcus's hands. "You're home early," Marcus said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. Flat, distant. "Job got canceled." Daniel stepped into the room. His face was calm, but Marcus could see the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. "What are you doing?" "I could ask you the same thing." Marcus held up the ledger. "What is this, Danny?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. He walked slowly across the room and sat down in the armchair by the window. He rubbed his face with both hands, and when he looked up again, something had changed in his expression. The mask was gone. "How much did you see?" Daniel asked quietly. "Enough. I saw Mama's name in here. I saw the offer you're planning to make on her house. I saw all of it." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then I guess there's no point in lying." "No, there isn't." "You want to know the truth?" "Fine. I'll tell you the truth." Daniel leaned forward in his chair. "Yes, I'm working with Magnolia Development. Yes, we're acquiring properties in Mama's neighborhood. And yes, some of those acquisitions involve convincing elderly homeowners to sell at below-market prices." Convincing. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest. "Is that what you call it?" "These notes talk about targeting people who are vulnerable, people who are scared, people who don't understand what their property is really worth. I call it business." Daniel's voice hardened. "The same kind of business you've been doing for 18 years. You think your pharmaceutical company got to be worth billions by being nice to people. You think you never took advantage of someone's weakness to close a deal. That's different. Is it how? Because you wear a suit and I wear work boots, because your victims are shareholders and mine are homeowners? It's the same game, Marcus. We're both just trying to get ahead." Marcus shook his head. "This isn't getting ahead. This is stealing from your own mother." "I'm not stealing anything. I'm offering her money for her house. She can say no." "Can she? When you're the one controlling the information, when you're the one telling her what her house is worth, when she trusts you because you're her son." Daniel stood up abruptly. He walked to the window and stood there with his back to Marcus, his hands shoved in his pockets. "You want to know why I'm doing this?" he said without turning around. "You really want to know?" "Yes." "Because I'm tired." Daniel's voice cracked slightly. "I'm tired of being the one who stayed behind. I'm tired of watching Patricia buy designer clothes while I'm scraping together enough money to fix my truck. I'm tired of hearing about your success, your penthouse, your private jets while I'm working 12-hour days just to keep my head above water." He turned to face Marcus. There were tears in his eyes. "You left Marcus. You went to Boston and you became a billionaire, and you forgot all about us. You sent checks. Big deal. Checks don't make up for 18 years of absence. Checks don't make up for missing Daddy's memorial service because you had a meeting. Checks don't make up for being too busy to come home when Mama had her heart surgery." I didn't know about the surgery. Because you never called. Because you were too wrapped up in your empire to pick up the phone and ask how your own mother was doing. Daniel wiped his eyes angrily. So yeah, I'm doing this. I'm going to make enough money to finally have something of my own. Something that doesn't depend on waiting for my rich brother to remember I exist. Marcus stood there, the ledger still in his hands, feeling the weight of his brother's words. Was Daniel right? Had Marcus really been so absent, so disconnected from his family, that his brother had turned to this no? Marcus pushed the thought away. Daniel's choices were Daniel's choices. Whatever Marcus had or hadn't done, nothing justified stealing from elderly people. Nothing justified targeting their own mother. I'm not going to let you do this, Marcus said quietly. Daniel laughed. It was a bitter, hollow sound. Let me... What are you going to do, Marcus? You're bankrupt, remember? You don't have any money. You don't have any power. You're living in my house, eating my food, working for my company. What exactly are you going to do to stop me? This was the moment. Marcus knew he could end it right here. He could pull out his phone, show Daniel. His bank account revealed that the whole bankruptcy story had been a lie. He could buy his mother's house himself. He could hire lawyers to shut down Magnolia Development. He could use his billions to destroy everything Daniel had built. But something stopped him. If he revealed himself now, he would never know the whole truth. He would never know how deep this went. He would never know who else was involved. And he would never know if there was still some part of his brother worth saving. You're right, Marcus said slowly. I can't stop you. I don't have money or power or anything else, but I do have something. What's that? Time. I'm going to stay right here, Danny. I'm going to watch. And sooner or later, you're going to make a mistake. And when you do, I'll be there. Daniel stared at him for a long moment. Then he laughed again, but this time there was something different in it. Something almost like respect. You know what, Marcus? You've got more fight in you than I expected. Most people would have run to the police by now. I'm not most people. No, you're not. Daniel walked toward the door, then stopped and looked back. Just remember something. You're in my house. You're in my world now. And in my world, I make the rules. Sim. He walked out, leaving Marcus alone with the ledger and the terrible knowledge of what his brother had become. That night, Marcus didn't sleep. He lay in the spare room, staring at the ceiling, turning everything over in his mind. Daniel was corrupt. That much was clear. But was he acting alone? Or was someone else pulling the strings? And what about their mother? Eleanor had warned Marcus about Daniel. Or had she? Her words had been cryptic, ambiguous. Sometimes the people who offer help aren't offering what you think they're offering. That could mean anything. Did she know about the scheme? Was she involved somehow? Or was she just as much a victim as everyone else? Marcus needed more information. He needed to understand the full scope of what was happening before he could decide what to do about it. The next morning, he acted like nothing had changed. He ate breakfast with Daniel. He went to work with the construction crew. He hauled materials and cleaned job sites and pretended to be the same desperate, broken man he had been pretending to be for 3 weeks. But now, he was watching more closely. He noticed how Daniel stepped away to take phone calls at least 3 times a day. He noticed how Daniel's mood shifted after those calls, sometimes becoming agitated, sometimes becoming eerily calm. He noticed how Daniel drove past certain houses on their way to job sites, slowing down, studying them, making mental notes. And he noticed how Daniel had started looking at him differently, more carefully, more suspiciously. The easy camaraderie they had shared was gone. In its place was a wary tension, like 2 predators circling each other, each waiting for the other to make a move. On the 5th day after the confrontation, something changed. They were driving back from a job site when Daniel's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and Marcus saw his brother's face go pale. I need to take this, Daniel said. He pulled the truck to the side of the road and stepped out. Marcus watched through the window as Daniel paced back and forth, his free hand gesturing wildly. He couldn't hear the words, but he could see the fear on his brother's face, the desperation. Something had gone wrong. Daniel ended the call and stood there for a moment, his head bowed, his shoulders slumped. Then he got back in the truck. "Everything okay?" Marcus asked. Daniel didn't answer. He just started driving, his jaw clenched, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. They drove in silence for several minutes. Then, without warning, Daniel pulled into the parking lot of a roadside bar. "I need a drink," he said. "You coming?" Marcus hesitated. He had never seen his brother like this. The confident, controlled man who had threatened him 5 days ago was gone. In his place was someone who looked scared. Someone who looked like he was in way over his head. "Yeah," Marcus said. "I'm coming." They went inside and took seats at the bar. Daniel ordered whiskey. Marcus ordered a beer he didn't intend to drink. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Daniel drank his whiskey in 2 swallows and ordered another. "I'm in trouble," Daniel said finally. Marcus waited. "The people I'm working with, Magnolia Development. They're not just real estate developers." Daniel stared into his glass. "They're connected. You understand what I'm saying? Connected to people you don't want to cross." "What kind of people?" "The kind who don't take no for an answer. The kind who make problems disappear." Daniel drank his second whiskey. "I thought I was using them. I thought I could get what I needed and get out. But that's not how it works. Once you're in, you're in. And now they're pressuring me to move faster, to get more properties, to—" He trailed off. "To what?" Daniel looked at Marcus, and for the first time Marcus saw genuine fear in his brother's eyes. "They want Mama's house. Not because it's worth anything special, because of where it is. It's the last piece they need to complete the block. And they've told me that if I can't deliver it, they'll find another way to get it." "What does that mean?" "It means they'll do whatever it takes. It means Mama could get hurt." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "So stop. Walk away. Go to the police." Daniel laughed bitterly. "The police? Half of them are on Magnolia's payroll. And even if they weren't, what do you think would happen to me? To Mama? These people don't forgive. They don't forget." "Then what are you going to do?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I don't know. I really don't know." They sat there in silence, 2 brothers in a roadside bar, both of them carrying secrets, both of them trapped in situations they didn't know how to escape. Marcus thought about revealing himself, telling Daniel the truth, using his billions to fix this, to buy off whoever needed to be bought off, to make this whole nightmare disappear. But even as he considered it, he knew it wasn't that simple. Money couldn't fix everything, and sometimes throwing money at a problem only made it worse. Besides, he still didn't know if he could trust Daniel. His brother had lied to him, had tried to steal from their own mother. How could Marcus be sure that this whole confession wasn't just another manipulation, another layer of deception designed to gain his sympathy? He couldn't be sure, so he stayed silent. And he waited. The drive back to Daniel's house was quiet, both brothers lost in their own thoughts, their own fears, their own plans. When they pulled into the driveway, Daniel killed the engine, but didn't move to get out. "Marcus?" "Yeah. I know I don't have any right to ask you this, after what I've done, after what you found out." Daniel turned to look at him. "But I need your help. I can't do this alone. I can't protect Mama alone. And whatever you think of me, whatever I've become, I know you still love her. I know you don't want to see her hurt." Marcus looked at his brother, at the fear in his eyes, at the desperation. Was it real, or was it another performance? He didn't know. But he knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened next, he had to protect his mother. Even if that meant working with a brother he couldn't trust. Even if it meant walking into a situation he didn't fully understand. "Tell me everything," Marcus said. "From the beginning. Don't leave anything out." Daniel nodded slowly, and then he started to talk. What Marcus heard over the next hour changed everything he thought he knew about his family, about Savannah, and about the real reason his mother had warned him to be careful. Because the danger wasn't just from Daniel. The danger was much closer than Marcus had ever imagined. And it had been watching him from the moment he arrived. Daniel took a deep breath and began talking. It started 2 years ago. The construction business was failing. I was 3 months behind on my mortgage, my truck was about to be repossessed, and I didn't know how I was going to make payroll. That's when a man named Vincent Crane approached me. Marcus listened without interrupting. Crane said he represented Magnolia Development Group. Said they were looking for someone local, someone who knew the community, someone people trusted. They wanted to acquire properties in certain neighborhoods, historical areas, places where the land was worth more than the houses sitting on it. And you said yes. I said I'd think about it, but then my truck broke down, and one of my guys got hurt on a job site and the insurance wouldn't cover it, and Mama needed a new roof. Daniel's voice cracked. I was drowning, Marcus. I was drowning, and nobody was throwing me a rope. You could have called me? Could I? When was the last time you answered a call that wasn't about business? When was the last time you asked how I was doing without it being a formality? Daniel shook his head. I know I'm not innocent here. I made my choices. But don't pretend you would have helped me if I'd asked. We both know that's not true. Marcus wanted to argue. He wanted to say that of course he would have helped, that family was everything, that he would never have let his brother struggle alone. But the words stuck in his throat, because he wasn't sure they were true. Keep going, Marcus said quietly. The first few deals were easy. Crane would identify a property. I would approach the owner, offer to help them out, talk about how the neighborhood was changing, how property values were going to drop. Most of them were happy to sell. They got cash in hand. I got a commission. Everybody won. Except they didn't win. You cheated them out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. I told myself it didn't matter. They were old. They didn't need big houses anymore. The money I gave them was enough to live on. Daniel laughed bitterly. Amazing how easy it is to justify anything when you need the money badly enough. When did it change? About 6 months ago. Crane started pushing harder. The easy targets were gone. The people who were left didn't want to sell. That's when Crane introduced me to his associates. Daniel's face went pale at the memory. They're not developers, Marcus. They're criminals. Money laundering, extortion, probably worse. They use real estate to clean their cash. Buy properties cheap. Renovate them on paper. Sell them at inflated prices. Millions of dollars flowing through legitimate-looking transactions. Marcus felt his stomach turn. This was worse than he had imagined. Much worse. I tried to get out. I told Crane I was done, that I didn't sign up for this. You know what he said? What? He laughed. He actually laughed. Then he showed me photographs. Pictures of me meeting with homeowners. Recordings of conversations where I talked about deflating property values. Documents with my signature on them. Daniel's hands were shaking. He owns me, Marcus. He has enough evidence to put me in prison for 20 years. And if I try to run, if I try to talk to anyone about this, he said he'll make sure I disappear. Me and everyone I care about. Including Mama. Especially Mama. Her property is the key to everything. It's the last piece they need. Once they have it, they can develop the entire block. We're talking about a project worth $50 million. They're not going to let one old woman stand in their way. Marcus stood up and walked to the window. His mind was racing, processing everything Daniel had told him, trying to find a way out of this maze. Why are you telling me this now? He asked without turning around. A week ago you threatened me. You said you made the rules. What changed? The phone call today. Crane called to tell me I have 2 weeks. 2 weeks to get Mama to sign over her house, or they're going to take matters into their own hands. What does that mean? I don't know exactly, and I don't want to find out. Marcus turned to face his brother. You realize I still don't trust you. For all I know, this whole confession is another manipulation, another way to get what you want. I know. Daniel met his eyes. I wouldn't trust me either. But I'm telling you the truth, Marcus. For the first time since you got here, I'm telling you the complete truth. Because I don't have any other options. Because I'm scared, And because whatever else I am, I love Mama. I don't want to see her hurt. Marcus studied his brother's face, looking for any sign of deception, any tell that would reveal this was just another lie. He didn't find one. That didn't mean it wasn't there. But for now, he would have to take a chance. "All right," Marcus said. "I'm going to help you. But we do this my way. You don't make any moves without telling me first. You don't talk to Crane without me knowing about it. And if I find out you're lying to me about anything at all, I'll walk away and let you deal with this alone. Understood?" Daniel nodded. "Understood. Good. Now tell me everything you know about Vincent Crane." The next 3 days were a blur of activity. Marcus used Daniel's computer to research Magnolia Development Group. On the surface, it looked legitimate. A mid-sized real estate company based in Atlanta with projects throughout Georgia and the Carolinas. Professional website. Glossy brochures. All the trappings of a successful business. But when Marcus dug deeper, he found cracks in the facade. Shell companies layered on top of shell companies. Properties bought and sold multiple times in a single year, each time at a higher price. Board members who existed only on paper with addresses that led to empty lots and abandoned buildings. It was a money laundering operation just like Daniel had said. And it was massive. Marcus also made some phone calls. Not to his company, not to his lawyers. Those calls would leave traces, create records that could be discovered. Instead, he called an old friend from business school, a man named David Chen, who now worked for the Department of Justice. "I need information," Marcus said. "Off the record." That's a dangerous way to start a conversation. "I know, but this is important. Have you ever heard of a company called Magnolia Development Group?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Where did you hear that name?" "I can't tell you. Not yet. But I need to know what you know." Another pause. When David spoke again, his voice was lower, more cautious. "Magnolia Development is on our radar. Has been for about 18 months. We believe they're connected to organized crime out of Miami. Money laundering, possibly human trafficking, definitely extortion. But we can't prove anything. Every time we get close, witnesses disappear. Evidence vanishes. Someone on the inside is feeding them information." "How high does it go?" "High enough that I'm not comfortable talking about this on the phone. Marcus, whatever you're mixed up in, be careful. These are not people you want as enemies." "I understand. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're about to do something stupid." "Probably," Marcus admitted. "But I don't have a choice." He hung up and sat there for a long moment thinking about what he had learned. This was bigger than his brother. Bigger than his mother's house. This was organized crime operating in plain sight, protected by connections Marcus couldn't even begin to understand. He should walk away. He should take his mother and leave Savannah, use his billions to disappear somewhere safe, let the authorities handle this. But he couldn't. Because if he walked away, Daniel would be destroyed. His mother would lose her home. And the people behind Magnolia Development would just keep doing what they were doing, destroying lives, stealing from the vulnerable, operating above the law. Marcus Whitfield had spent 18 years building an empire. Now he was going to use everything he had learned to tear one down. On the 4th day, Marcus did something he had been avoiding since he arrived in Savannah. He went to see his mother. Eleanor Whitfield was sitting on her front porch when he pulled up in Daniel's truck. She watched him walk up the path, her expression unreadable as always. "Marcus, I was wondering when you'd come." "You knew I would. I know a lot of things." She gestured to the chair beside her. "Sit down. We have a lot to talk about." Marcus sat. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the wind rustling through the oak tree in the front yard. "You found out about Daniel," Eleanor said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "And now you want to know what I know." "Do you know, I mean, about what he's been doing?" Eleanor laughed softly. It was not a happy sound. "I'm 78 years old, Marcus. I've buried a husband, raised 3 children, and watched this neighborhood change from a place where everybody knew everybody to a place where strangers knock on doors asking if you want to sell. You think I don't know when something is wrong? Why didn't you say something? To who? To Patricia, who only cares about her social calendar. To you, who only calls on holidays. Eleanor's voice hardened. I've been fighting this battle alone for 2 years. I've watched my neighbors disappear one by one, their houses sold to people who never move in their yards going to seed while developers wait for the right moment to bulldoze everything and build condominiums. You could have called me. I would have helped. Would you? Eleanor turned to look at him directly. Or would you have sent a check and considered your duty done? Marcus didn't answer. He couldn't. That's what I thought. Eleanor sighed. I'm not saying this to hurt you, Marcus. I'm saying it because you need to understand something. You can't buy your way out of every problem. You can't write checks to fix broken relationships. At some point, you have to actually show up. You have to be present. You have to care about something more than your own success. I'm here now. Yes, you are. Eleanor studied his face. The question is, why are you really here? And don't give me that story about being bankrupt. I know it's not true. Marcus felt his heart stop. What? I told you I know a lot of things. I've been following your career, Marcus. Every article, every interview, every Forbes list. I know exactly how much you're worth. I've known since the day you walked through my door in those ridiculous clothes pretending to be something you're not. Marcus stared at his mother, unable to speak. She had known. From the very beginning, she had known. Why didn't you say anything? Because I wanted to see what you would do. I wanted to see if you would tell the truth when the truth became necessary. I wanted to see if my son was still in there somewhere underneath all that money and success and loneliness. And what did you see? Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. I saw a man who came home to test his family. A man who was so convinced that everyone around him was motivated by greed that he created a scenario designed to prove himself right. A man who has spent so long looking for betrayal that he's forgotten how to recognize love. Mama, I'm not finished. Eleanor's voice was firm. I also saw a man who, when he discovered his brother was in trouble, didn't run away. A man who chose to stay and fight even when he didn't know what he was fighting against. A man who still has the capacity to care about something other than himself. She reached out and took his hand. That's the man I've been waiting for. That's the son I raised. And that's the person who's going to help me save this family. Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes. He hadn't cried in years. He had forgotten how. I don't know if I can, he whispered. These people Daniel is involved with, they're dangerous. They have connections everywhere. Even if I use everything I have, I'm not sure it's enough. Then you'll have to be smarter than them. Eleanor squeezed his hand. You've spent 18 years outsmarting the smartest people in business. You've built an empire from nothing. You've negotiated deals that nobody thought were possible. Are you telling me you can't handle a few criminals? It's not that simple. Nothing worthwhile ever is. Eleanor released his hand and stood up. Now come inside. I'll make us some coffee, and you'll tell me everything. And then we'll figure out how to end this. They talked for hours. Marcus told his mother everything. The test he had designed. The rejection from Patricia and the aunts and uncles. Daniel's offer of help and the corruption Marcus had discovered. The threats from Vincent Crane. The 2-week deadline. Eleanor listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. There's something you need to understand about Daniel, she said finally. He's not a bad person. He's a weak person. There's a difference. He tried to steal your house. He got in over his head and didn't know how to get out. That's not the same as being evil. I'm not excusing what he did, but I am saying that there's still something worth saving in your brother. If you give up on him now, he'll be lost forever. What do you want me to do? I want you to be the man I know you can be, not the billionaire, not the CEO, the man, the brother, the son. Eleanor leaned forward. Use your resources, use your connections, but don't use them to destroy Daniel. Use them to save him. Marcus thought about everything he had learned, about his brother's desperation, about his mother's years of silent struggle, about the test he had designed and the unexpected results it had produced. He had come to Savannah looking for proof that his family didn't love him. Instead, he had found something far more complicated. He had found brokenness. He had found fear. He had found people who had made terrible choices because they felt abandoned by the one person who had the power to help them, him. "All right," Marcus said, "I'll save him, but I'm going to need your help." Eleanor smiled. It was the first genuine smile Marcus had seen on her face since he arrived. "You've always had my help, baby, even when you didn't know it." That night, Marcus lay awake in his old bedroom, surrounded by memories of a childhood that felt like it belonged to someone else. His mother's words echoed in his mind. "You can't buy your way out of every problem. At some point, you have to actually show up." She was right. He had spent 18 years throwing money at his family, convincing himself that checks were the same as presents, that gifts were the same as love. He had kept them at arm's length, terrified of being vulnerable, terrified of being hurt. And in doing so, he had created the very distance he feared. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow he would stop hiding. Tomorrow he would become the man his mother believed he could be. And God help anyone who stood in his way. Part 4. Lưu ý viết đủ 3100 sinh trên 3600 từ. Liên kết liền mạch với các phần trước trong câu chuyện pha hội thoại, tạo thành một câu chuyện liền mạch khi ghép lại. Mỗi phần liền mạch với phần trước không giới thiệu lại câu chuyện ở đầu phần mới. Liên kết các phần của câu chuyện một cách liền mạch. Sử dụng câu chuyện tiếp giữa các phần. Duy trì chủ đề. Tránh ngắt quãng đột ngột, không sử dụng gạch đầu dòng hoặc tiêu đề phụ phong cách kể chuyện Mỹ Hoa Kỳ, giống văn giàu cảm xúc chân thực và gần gũi, không mô tả cảnh, tập trung vào hành động, cảm xúc và tâm lý nhân vật. Viết phần tiếp, đạt điểm 10-10 và bổ sung tiết tấu câu chuyện nhanh, sửa lời AI kể theo ngôi thứ 3, tăng độ kịch tính, không viết lằn mạn, kết thúc phần không giới thiệu phần sau. Lưu ý trả lời trong mục tin nhắn, không nhảy sang mục document mới, 2-3 phút. Cần có mini climax và đạt 10-15 mini climax, mỗi phần cứ 10-12 phút có một twist lớn sâu sắc đan xen, mini cliffhanger mạnh hơn. Tăng tính tự nhiên cho phản ứng của các nhân vật, thêm nhịp điệu, kịch tính thực tế và gần gũi. Mỗi 8-10 phút cần có móc giữ chân khán giả, thêm đánh dấu thời gian. Lưu ý không mô tả cảnh, không có phần gạch trong bài viết và chỉ cần viết nội dung và viết đúng lệnh nha. Show more, 13. 52, Part 4, The Confrontation. The next morning, Marcus made a phone call that changed everything. He didn't call his lawyers. He didn't call his board of directors. He called someone far more dangerous. A woman named Rachel Torres. Rachel had worked for Marcus for 12 years. On paper, she was his executive assistant. In reality, she was a fixer. The kind of person who made problems disappear without leaving traces. The kind of person who knew where every body was buried because she had helped bury most of them. "I need you in Savannah," Marcus said. "Today." "What's the situation?" "Organized crime, money laundering, real estate fraud, and a 2-week deadline before they hurt my family." Rachel was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. "I'll be there by noon. Send me everything you have." Marcus spent the next 4 hours compiling every piece of information he had gathered. The ledger from Daniel's filing cabinet, the research on Magnolia Development, the names and addresses of every property they had acquired, the shell companies, the fake board members, everything. He sent it all to Rachel. Then he went to find Daniel. His brother was in the backyard, staring at nothing, a cup of coffee going cold in his hands. He looked like a man waiting for execution. "We need to talk," Marcus said. "About what?" "The fact that I've destroyed my life. The fact that I've put Mama in danger. The fact that in 10 days Vincent Crane is going to either kill me or send me to prison. About how we're going to fix this." Daniel laughed bitterly. "There is no fixing this, Marcus. I've been over it 1,000 times. There's no way out." "There's always a way out. You just have to be willing to do what it takes to find it. And what exactly does that mean? Marcus sat down across from his brother. It means I'm going to tell you something. Something I should have told you weeks ago. But before I do, I need you to understand that everything changes after this. There's no going back. Daniel looked at him confused. What are you talking about? I'm not bankrupt. The words hung in the air between them. Daniel blinked. What? I'm not bankrupt. I never was. The lawsuit, the SEC investigation, losing everything. It was all a lie. Daniel stared at him. His face went through a series of emotions. Confusion, disbelief, anger, betrayal. You lied to me. Yes. This whole time, the past month. Everything. Yes. Daniel stood up so fast his chair fell over. Why? Why would you do that? Because I wanted to know the truth. I wanted to know who in this family actually loved me, and who was just waiting around for my money. So this was a test? Daniel's voice rose. I took you into my home. I gave you a job. I shared things with you that I've never shared with anyone. And the whole time you were testing me. Yes. Daniel's fist connected with Marcus's jaw before Marcus could react. The punch sent Marcus stumbling backward. He tasted blood. His vision blurred for a moment, then cleared. Daniel was standing over him, breathing hard, his hand still clenched. I deserve that, Marcus said. You deserve a lot worse than that. Daniel's voice shook with rage. Do you have any idea what I've been through? Do you have any idea how scared I've been? And you had the power to help me this entire time. You had billions of dollars sitting in your bank account while I was losing sleep, wondering if criminals were going to kill our mother. I know. You know? That's all you have to say. No. Marcus got to his feet slowly. I also have to say that I'm sorry. I was wrong. About the test. About keeping the truth from you. About all of it. I came here looking for proof that my family was selfish and greedy, and I found something I didn't expect. What's that? I found out that I was the selfish one. I was the one who abandoned this family. I was the one who hid behind my money instead of actually being present. And I was the one who created the distance that made you feel like you couldn't ask for help. Daniel's anger flickered. Something else crossed his face. Something that looked almost like hope. You're saying this is your fault, what I did? No, what you did is on you. But the situation that led you there, the desperation, the feeling that you were alone and nobody cared. Marcus met his brother's eyes. That's on me, and I'm going to make it right. How Crane has evidence against me. He has connections everywhere, even with all your money. I don't just have money, Daniel. I have resources, people, information. And right now, I have someone on her way here who is very, very good at making problems like Vincent Crane disappear. Daniel studied his brother's face. Who are you? I mean, really, who have you become in the last 18 years? Someone who wins, Marcus said simply. Someone who hasn't lost a fight since I left Savannah, and I don't intend to start now. Rachel Torres arrived at exactly noon. She was a small woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. I've reviewed everything you sent, she said, setting up her laptop on Daniel's kitchen table. Magnolia Development is a front for the Castellano family out of Miami. They've been expanding into Georgia for the past 5 years. Real estate is just one arm of their operation. Castellano. Daniel went pale. As in the Castellano crime family. The same. Vincent Crane is their point man in Savannah. He handles acquisitions, manages local assets, and eliminates obstacles. Rachel looked up from her laptop. Which means your brother has been working for the mob for the past 2 years. Daniel sat down heavily. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know who they really were. That's actually helpful, Rachel said. It means you're not a willing participant in organized crime. You're a victim who was coerced and manipulated. Can you use that? Marcus asked. I can use everything, Rachel turned her laptop around to show them the screen. Over the past 12 years, I've built relationships with people in every major law enforcement agency: FBI, DOJ, IRS, SEC. I know who to call and what to say to get their attention. You're going to turn them in. I'm going to do better than that. I'm going to give the FBI everything they need to take down the entire Castellano real estate operation in Georgia. Crane, his bosses, everyone. Daniel shook his head. They'll know it was me. They'll come after us. They won't have the chance. By the time the FBI moves, Crane and his people will be too busy trying to save themselves to worry about revenge. Rachel smiled coldly. Besides, I've also arranged for some insurance, the kind that makes people think very carefully before they hurt anyone connected to Marcus Whitfield. What kind of insurance? The kind you don't need to know about. Rachel closed her laptop. Now there's something else we need to discuss. Your mother. What about her? She needs to be somewhere safe until this is over. Somewhere Crane can't reach her. Marcus nodded. I'll talk to her. Good. You have 48 hours before I make the call to the FBI. Use that time to get everyone into position. Rachel stood up. And Marcus. Don't let sentiment cloud your judgment. This is going to get ugly before it gets better. I understand. I hope you do. She gathered her things and headed for the door. I'll be in touch. After Rachel left, Marcus and Daniel sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Daniel spoke. I still can't believe you lied to me for a month. I know. I told you things I've never told anyone. About being scared. About feeling like a failure. About wanting to be more than just the brother who stayed behind. I know. And the whole time you were sitting on billions of dollars watching me struggle, taking notes like I was some kind of experiment. Yes. Marcus met his brother's eyes. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to make that up to you. But right now, I need you to focus. We have 48 hours to get Mama somewhere safe and prepare for whatever comes next. Can you do that? Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. Yeah, I can do that. Good. Let's go talk to Mama. Eleanor Whitfield listened to everything without saying a word. She listened to Marcus explain about Rachel Torres and the FBI. She listened to him describe the plan to take down Magnolia Development. She listened to him tell her that she needed to leave her home, the home she had lived in for 50 years, and go somewhere safe until it was over. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she laughed. You think I'm going to run away, she said. You think I'm going to let some criminals chase me out of my own house. Mama, these people are dangerous. I know they're dangerous. I've known they were dangerous since they started buying up my neighbors' homes 2 years ago. But I didn't run then, and I'm not running now. This isn't about pride. No, it's about principle. Eleanor's voice hardened. I've lived in this house for 50 years. I raised 3 children here. I buried my husband from here. This is my home, Marcus. Mine. And I will not let anyone, not criminals, not developers, not anyone take it from me. They could hurt you. They could try. Eleanor smiled. But I'm not as helpless as you seem to think. I've survived poverty and racism and a heart attack and the death of the man I loved more than life itself. You think I'm afraid of some thugs in suits? Marcus looked at Daniel for support. Daniel just shrugged. You know how she is, Daniel said. Once she makes up her mind about something, there's no changing it. Mama, please. I said no, Marcus. Eleanor's voice was final. But I'll tell you what I will do. I'll let you put whatever security measures you want around this house. I'll let you install cameras and alarms and whatever else makes you feel better. But I am not leaving. Marcus wanted to argue. He wanted to throw her over his shoulder and carry her to safety if necessary. But he knew it wouldn't work. His mother was the most stubborn person he had ever met. It was where he had gotten it from. Fine, he said. But you do exactly what I say when it comes to security. No arguments. No arguments, Eleanor agreed. Now, is there anything else you need to tell me? Any other secrets you've been keeping? Marcus hesitated. Actually, there is one more thing. What? The money I used to start my company, the angel investment that got me off the ground. Marcus took a deep breath. I know where it came from. Eleanor's expression didn't change. Do you? It was you. The life insurance money from Daddy. You invested it in my first startup. Who told you that? Nobody. I figured it out. The timing, the amount, the anonymous investor who never wanted recognition. Marcus felt tears threatening again. You gave me everything, Mama. Everything you had, and you never said a word. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. You were drowning, baby. You had this dream, this big, impossible dream, and nobody believed in you. Nobody except me. Her voice softened. I couldn't let you fail. Not when I knew what you could become. But that money was supposed to be for you, for emergencies, for your future. You are my future, Marcus. You and Daniel and Patricia. Everything I've ever done has been for you. She squeezed his hand. And I would do it again in a heartbeat. Marcus couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They streamed down his face as he pulled his mother into a hug. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm sorry for leaving. I'm sorry for not being here. I'm sorry for everything. I know, baby, I know. They held each other for a long time. Daniel stood off to the side, watching his own eyes suspiciously bright. Finally, Eleanor pulled back and wiped Marcus's tears with her thumb, the same way she had done when he was a child. No more apologies, she said. No more looking backward. From now on, we look forward. We fix what's broken. We save what can be saved. Together, as a family. Together, Marcus agreed. Together, Daniel echoed. For the first time since he arrived in Savannah, Marcus felt something he had almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. The next 48 hours passed in a blur. Rachel's team installed a state-of-the-art security system at Eleanor's house. Cameras, motion sensors, a direct line to a private security firm that could have armed guards on site within minutes. Marcus made arrangements for his mother's finances. A trust fund that would ensure she never had to worry about money again. A legal team that would protect her interests no matter what happened. Daniel spent hours on the phone with Rachel going over every detail of his involvement with Magnolia Development. Every meeting, every conversation, every transaction. Rachel recorded everything, building a case that would give the FBI everything they needed. And through it all, Marcus watched. He watched his brother transform from a scared, desperate man into someone determined to make things right. He watched his mother move around her house with a quiet dignity that made him proud. He watched a family that had been broken begin to heal. On the morning of the 48th hour, Rachel called. It's done, she said. The FBI is moving tonight. By tomorrow morning, Vincent Crane and everyone connected to Magnolia Development will be in custody. What about Daniel? I've arranged immunity in exchange for his testimony. He'll have to cooperate fully, but he won't face charges. Marcus closed his eyes in relief. Thank you, Rachel. Don't thank me yet. There's still one more thing we need to handle. What? Patricia. Marcus frowned. What about Patricia? I did some digging while I was putting together the case against Magnolia. Your sister's husband, Richard. He's been taking payments from Crane for the past 18 months. Marcus felt his stomach drop. What? Crane needed someone to provide cover for the shell companies. Someone with legitimate business credentials. Richard has been signing documents, attending meetings, providing respectability. Rachel paused. He's in this as deep as anyone. Does Patricia know? I don't know, but you need to find out before the FBI does. Marcus ended the call and stood there trying to process what he had just learned. Richard, his sister's husband, The man who had looked at Marcus with contempt at that Sunday dinner, who had called him complicated, who had made excuses for why Patricia couldn't help. That man was working for the same criminals who had threatened their mother. Marcus grabbed his keys and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" Daniel asked. "To see Patricia. There's something she needs to know." The drive across Savannah took 20 minutes. Marcus used every one of them to think about what he was going to say. Patricia had rejected him at that dinner table. She had made him feel worthless. She had chosen her social status over her own brother. But she was still his sister. And she deserved to know the truth about her husband before the FBI came knocking on her door. Marcus pulled into Patricia's driveway and sat there for a moment, gathering his courage. Then he got out of the car and walked up to the front door. Patricia opened it before he could knock. Her face went through a rapid series of emotions when she saw him. Surprise, annoyance, suspicion. "Marcus, what are you doing here?" "We need to talk. It's about Richard." Patricia's expression hardened. "If you're here to ask for money, I'm not here to ask for anything." Marcus pushed past her into the house. "Where is he?" "He's not here. He's at a meeting downtown." Patricia followed him into the living room. "What is this about?" "It's about Magnolia Development. It's about Vincent Crane. And it's about the fact that your husband has been working with organized crime for the past 18 months. Patricia's face went white. "What? The FBI is moving tonight. By tomorrow, everyone connected to Magnolia will be arrested, including Richard." "That's insane. Richard is a legitimate businessman. He would never—" "I have proof, Patricia. Documents, recordings, everything." Marcus watched his sister's face crumble as the reality set in. "I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you want to hear, but you needed to know before it was too late." Patricia sat down heavily on the couch. Her hands were shaking. "I knew something was wrong," she whispered. "The late nights, the phone calls he didn't want me to hear, the money that kept appearing in our accounts with no explanation." She looked up at Marcus with tears in her eyes. I knew, and I didn't want to see it. You can still get out ahead of this. If you cooperate with the FBI, tell them everything you know, you might be able to avoid charges." "Charges?" Patricia laughed bitterly. "My life is over, Marcus. Everything I've built, my reputation, my business, all of it gone." "Your life isn't over, but it's about to change." Marcus sat down across from her. "And you have a choice to make. You can try to protect Richard, go down with him, lose everything. Or you can do the right thing and start over." Patricia was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I was horrible to you. At Sunday dinner. The things I said. The way I treated you." "Yes, you were." "I was scared, Marcus. Scared that if you lost everything, it meant that anyone could lose everything. That all the security I thought I had built was just an illusion." She wiped her eyes. "And I was angry. Angry that you left and became successful while I stayed here and struggled. Angry that you got to have the big life while I was stuck playing small-town games. You chose to stay. I know, but that doesn't make the anger go away." Patricia looked at him. "Can you ever forgive me?" Marcus thought about everything that had happened. The rejection, the cruelty, the years of distance and resentment. He thought about what his mother had said. "We fix what's broken. We save what can be saved. Together, as a family." "I don't know if I can forgive you," Marcus said honestly. "But I'm willing to try." Patricia nodded. "That's more than I deserve." "Maybe, but it's what family does." He stood up and headed for the door. Then he stopped and turned back. "The FBI will be here tomorrow morning. Be ready. And Patricia?" "Yes. Whatever happens, you're still my sister. That means something to me, even after everything." He walked out before she could respond. The sun was setting over Savannah as Marcus drove back to his mother's house. In a few hours, everything would change. Vincent Crane would be arrested. Richard would be exposed. The scheme that had threatened his family would be dismantled. and Marcus would have to decide what came next. He pulled into his mother's driveway and sat there for a moment watching the last light fade from the sky. He had come to Savannah looking for truth. He had found far more than he bargained for. And the biggest revelation was still waiting for him inside that house. The one thing nobody had told him, the secret his mother had been keeping for 18 years. Marcus walked into his mother's house and found her sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of tea in her hands and a photograph album open in front of her. She looked up when he entered, and something in her expression made him stop. "Sit down, Marcus. There's something I need to tell you." He sat across from her, his heart already beginning to beat faster. He had seen that look on his mother's face only twice before. Once when she told him his father had died. Once when she told him she had cancer and had beaten it. Whatever she was about to say, it was going to change everything. "I've been keeping a secret from you," Eleanor said slowly. "A secret I've carried for 18 years. I told myself I was protecting you, that you were better off not knowing. But after everything that's happened, after watching you come home and fight for this family, I realized that you deserve the truth." "What truth?" Eleanor turned the photograph album around so Marcus could see it. The picture on the page showed a young woman, maybe 25 years old, with dark hair and eyes that looked exactly like his. "Her name was Catherine," Eleanor said. "Catherine Williams. She was your father's secretary at the shipping company where he worked." Marcus stared at the photograph. "I don't understand." "Your father had an affair, Marcus. It lasted 3 years. And when he died, he left behind more than just a wife and 3 children." Eleanor's voice was steady, but Marcus could see the pain in her eyes. "He left behind a daughter, your half-sister. Her name is Angela." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. A sister. He had a sister he never knew existed. "Where is she now?" "Here, in Savannah. She's been here the whole time." Eleanor closed the photograph album. "She grew up in foster care after her mother died. She never knew who her father was. I found out about her 10 years ago when I was going through your father's old papers and discovered letters he had hidden." 10 years? "You've known about this for 10 years and you never told me. What was I supposed to say? Your father, the man you worshipped, the man you've been trying to live up to your entire life, had a secret family, that everything you believed about him was a lie." Marcus stood up and walked to the window. His mind was reeling. His father. The man who had told him that honesty was the most important virtue. The man who had lectured him about integrity and doing the right thing. That man had been living a double life. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because Angela is in trouble." Eleanor's voice tightened. "She's one of the homeowners on Daniel's list. One of the people Magnolia Development has been targeting. She bought a house in the neighborhood 3 years ago, trying to be close to the family she never knew she had, and now she's about to lose everything." Marcus turned around. "Does she know about us?" "She knows. I told her 5 years ago. We've been meeting in secret ever since." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "She's a good person, Marcus. Kind. Strong. She works as a nurse at the hospital. She takes care of people. And she has never once asked me for anything, even though she had every right to be angry about the way life treated her." "Why didn't she reach out to me, to Daniel, to Patricia?" "Because I asked her not to. I told her you weren't ready, that you had too much on your plate, that revealing her existence would tear the family apart." Eleanor wiped her eyes. "I was wrong. I was trying to control everything, manage everyone, keep all the secrets in their proper places. But secrets have a way of coming out, and when they do, they cause more damage than the truth ever would have." Marcus sat back down across from his mother. "I need to meet her." "I know. I've already called her. She's on her way." 20 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Marcus opened it and found himself looking at a woman who could have been his twin. The same eyes, the same jawline, the same stubborn set to her mouth that he saw every time he looked in a mirror. "You must be Marcus," she said. Her voice was steady, but he could see her hands trembling slightly at her sides. "And you must be Angela." They stood there for a moment, neither knowing what to say. Decades of separation, years of secrets, a lifetime of what-ifs hanging in the air between them. Then Angela smiled. It was his father's smile. The same smile Marcus saw in old photographs. The same smile he had inherited without knowing he was sharing it with someone else. "I've been waiting a long time to meet you," she said. "I wish I had known sooner." "So do I." She stepped inside and looked around at the house, at the photographs on the walls, at all the evidence of a family she had never been part of. "I used to walk past this house when I was a kid, after my mom died and I was in foster care. I didn't know why, but I felt drawn to this street, this neighborhood, like something was calling me home." Eleanor appeared in the doorway to the kitchen. "Angela, come in. Sit down. We have a lot to talk about." The next hour was one of the most intense of Marcus's life. Angela told them her story. Growing up in foster care, bouncing from home to home, never feeling like she belonged anywhere. Working her way through nursing school, determined to make something of herself despite everything she had been through. Finding out about her father, about the Whitfield family, about the siblings she had never known. "I was angry at first," she admitted. "Angry at your father for abandoning my mother. Angry at Eleanor for keeping the secret. Angry at all of you for having the life I should have had." "You had every right to be angry," Marcus said. "Maybe. But anger doesn't build anything. It just destroys." Angela looked at Eleanor. "Your mother taught me that. She's been more of a family to me in the past 5 years than anyone I've ever known. And she did it quietly, without asking for credit, without telling anyone." Marcus looked at his mother with new eyes. All this time, while he had been building his empire and testing his family and convincing himself that everyone was motivated by greed, his mother had been quietly taking care of a child his father had abandoned. A child who had no claim on her, no connection to her except through betrayal and pain. That was love, real love, the kind that didn't ask for anything in return. "What happens now?" Angela asked. "With Magnolia Development, with my house." "You're not going to lose your house," Marcus said firmly. "I'm going to make sure of that. How they've been pressuring me for months, threatening me, telling me that if I don't sell, bad things will happen. They won't be threatening anyone after tonight." Marcus checked his watch. "In about 6 hours, the FBI is going to arrest Vincent Crane and everyone connected to Magnolia Development. The scheme is over." Angela stared at him. "You did that?" "I had help. But yes." "Why, you didn't even know I existed until an hour ago." "Because it was the right thing to do. Because this family has been broken for too long and it's time to start putting the pieces back together." Marcus met her eyes. "And because you're my sister. That means something, even if we're just meeting for the first time." Angela's eyes filled with tears. She tried to speak, couldn't, and simply nodded. Eleanor reached over and took both their hands. "This is what family is supposed to be," she said softly. "Not perfect, not without secrets or mistakes or pain, but together, supporting each other, choosing each other, even when it's hard." They sat there for a long moment, 3 generations of Whitfields finally beginning to heal. Then Marcus's phone rang. It was Rachel. "We have a problem." Marcus stepped away from the table. "What kind of problem?" "Crane knows. Someone tipped him off about the FBI raid. He's running." "Where?" "We don't know yet. But Marcus, there's more. Before he left, he made a phone call. We intercepted it." "What did he say?" Rachel was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was tight. "He said if he was going down, he was taking the Whitfields with him. He mentioned your mother's address specifically." Marcus felt ice run through his veins. "How long ago was this?" 20 minutes. I've already dispatched security, but they're at least 30 minutes out. You need to get everyone out of that house. Now." Marcus hung up and turned to face his mother and Angela. We need to leave. Right now. What's wrong? Eleanor asked. Crane knows about the FBI raid. He's coming here. Angela stood up immediately. I'll get the car. No. Marcus grabbed his keys. We all go together. Nobody separates. They moved quickly toward the front door. Marcus was reaching for the handle when he heard a sound that made his blood freeze. A car door slamming. Footsteps on the front porch. Then a voice he didn't recognize. Going somewhere. Marcus opened the door and found himself face to face with Vincent Crane. He was a tall man, well-dressed with cold eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. Behind him stood two other men, both large, both clearly armed. Mr. Whitfield, Crane said. The billionaire who pretended to be poor. I have to admit I didn't see that coming. Very clever. Crane, the FBI is on their way. Whatever you're planning, it's not going to work. The FBI is 30 minutes away. A lot can happen in 30 minutes. Crane stepped forward, forcing Marcus to step back into the house. I've spent 2 years building this operation. 2 years of careful planning, careful cultivation, careful extraction, and you destroyed it all in a matter of days. You destroyed yourself. I just helped it along. Crane's smile faded. I'm going to enjoy watching you lose everything you care about. Your mother, your sister, your brother. He pulled a gun from inside his jacket. But first we're going to have a conversation about all the money you're going to transfer to my accounts in the next 20 minutes. Consider it a severance package. Eleanor stepped forward. Put that gun away. You're not going to shoot anyone. Mrs. Whitfield, the matriarch. I've heard so much about you. Crane pointed the gun at her. I suggest you stay very quiet and let the adults handle this. You point that gun at my mother again, and I will end you. Marcus said, his voice deadly calm. With what, your bare hands, your billions of dollars? Crane laughed. Money can't stop bullets, Mr. Whitfield. No, but I can. The voice came from behind Crane. Daniel stepped out of the shadows at the side of the house, a shotgun leveled at Crane's back. Drop the gun, now. Crane's two men started to reach for their weapons. Don't, Daniel said. This shotgun holds 8 rounds. I can drop all 3 of you before any of you clear your holsters. Want to test me? Crane's smile finally disappeared. He slowly lowered his gun. You think this changes anything? You think the Castellanos are going to let this go? They'll send more people, better people. And they won't stop until everyone in your family is dead. The Castellanos have bigger problems right now, Daniel said. Like the FBI raid that's happening at their Miami headquarters as we speak. Your bosses are going to be too busy saving themselves to worry about us. Crane's face went pale. You're bluffing. Call them. Find out. Crane reached for his phone. He dialed a number and waited. His expression changed as whoever answered gave him the news. That's not possible, he said. That's not... He hung up and stood there, the gun hanging loosely at his side, his empire crumbling around him. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus said. You're going to put down that gun. You and your men are going to sit down and wait for the FBI to arrive. And you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison thinking about how you lost to a family you thought was weak. And if I don't, then my brother is going to shoot you and I'm going to watch. Marcus stepped closer to Crane. I've spent the last month learning that family is more important than money, more important than power, more important than anything else in this world. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to protect mine. Are you willing to die for yours? Crane looked at the gun in his hand, then at Daniel with the shotgun, then at Marcus with the cold fury in his eyes. Slowly, carefully, he set the gun on the ground. Smart choice, Daniel said. 15 minutes later, the FBI arrived. They found Vincent Crane and his 2 associates sitting on Eleanor Whitfield's front porch, hands zip-tied behind their backs, guarded by a man with a shotgun and a billionaire who had learned that the hardest battles aren't won with money. They were won with family. 3 months later, Marcus Whitfield stood in his mother's backyard, surrounded by people he loved. The trial was over. Vincent Crane and 17 other members of the Magnolia Development Operation had been convicted on charges ranging from money laundering to racketeering to attempted kidnapping. The Castellano family's Georgia operation had been dismantled. The homeowners who had been cheated out of their properties were being compensated through a fund Marcus had established. Daniel had testified against Crane in exchange for immunity. He was back to running his construction company, but now he had a new partner. Marcus had invested in the business not as a handout, but as a genuine investment in his brother's future. Patricia had divorced Richard, who was awaiting his own trial. She had lost most of her social standing, but she had found something more valuable: a relationship with her brothers that was built on honesty instead of resentment. Angela had been welcomed into the family. She still worked as a nurse, still lived in her small house in the neighborhood, but now she came to Sunday dinners. Now she had siblings who called to check on her. Now she had a mother figure who loved her openly instead of in secret. And Eleanor Whitfield sat at the head of the table watching her children, all four of them together for the first time. Marcus walked over to her and sat down. "You planned this, didn't you?" he said quietly. "The whole thing, from the moment I showed up pretending to be bankrupt." Eleanor smiled. "I don't know what you're talking about. You knew I was lying from the start. You let Patricia and the aunts and uncles reject me. You pushed me toward Daniel knowing what I would find. You even warned me about people offering help, making sure I would dig deeper instead of just accepting things at face value." "That's a very elaborate theory." "It's not a theory, it's the truth." Marcus shook his head in admiration. "You manipulated all of us. You used my test against me, turned it into something bigger. Something that forced me to confront everything I had been avoiding." Eleanor was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. "I've been watching you destroy yourself for 18 years, Marcus. Building walls, testing people, convincing yourself that money could replace love. I couldn't stop you. I couldn't force you to change. All I could do was wait for the right moment and hope that when it came, you would make the right choice. And if I hadn't, then I would have lost you. But I was willing to take that risk." Her eyes met his. "Because some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight might cost you everything." Marcus thought about everything he had been through. The test, the rejection, the discovery of Daniel's corruption, the confrontation with Crane, the revelation about Angela. All of it had been necessary. All of it had led him to this moment. "Thank you," he said. "For what? For not giving up on me. For believing I could be better than I was. For loving me enough to let me fail." Eleanor squeezed his hand. "That's what mothers do, baby. We love our children even when they're fools. We believe in them even when they don't believe in themselves. And we wait sometimes for years, sometimes for decades for them to finally come home." Marcus looked around the backyard at his family. Daniel laughing with Angela. Patricia talking quietly with one of their aunts. Cousins and uncles and everyone who had rejected him at that first Sunday dinner now gathered together in something that looked almost like healing. He had spent 18 years searching for proof that people only loved him for his money. Instead, he had found something infinitely more valuable. He had found the truth about himself. He had been the one who was broken. He had been the one who kept people at arm's length, who tested instead of trusted, who measured love in dollars and cents instead of presence and sacrifice. And it had taken losing everything, or pretending to finally understand what he had possessed all along. A family that loved him. Not because of what he could give them, but because of who he was. Marcus Whitfield had returned home pretending to be poor to test his family. What he discovered changed him forever. Not because his family was perfect, not because they had passed his test, but because they had taught him the one truth that all his billions could never buy. That real wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or property portfolios, or the number of zeros in your net worth. Real wealth is measured in the people who show up when you have nothing left to offer. The people who love you not for what you can give them, but simply because you exist. The people who wait for you to come home, no matter how long you've been gone. That is the only wealth that matters. and Marcus Whitfield finally had more of it than he could ever spend.